This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you!
Boring. Boring. Boring.
Okay, get it work. Don't tell us what we're gonna feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're gonna feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember what you're doing. You're in no position to dictate what we're gonna feel.
I call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages, the hostages.
Welcome to Lembit Öpik Live here on Unprecedented TV, where we find the facts, kill the spin, and tell it like it is as best we see it. Big thank you to all of you who are signing up and subscribing to Unprecedented TV at YouTube. Please do that. It helps us so much. Last week, as you may know, we were in Dallas, Texas, just before the great ice storm. Who knew? It's not that hot over there. Whatever happened to global warming? And it went rather well. We've got some fantastic footage with one of our number going around a racetrack. That's all going to be on full throttle fairly soon. But please do look forward to a whole set of new programming coming from the United States of America, where I'll be going again pretty soon. They really like us over there. Wherever you're watching, thanks so much for being with us, and do enjoy all of the different shows that we do. Now, let's talk about the continuing problems of the uselessness of Europe. I'm thinking specifically about the comparative irrelevance of European politicians when it comes to pretty much anything. But in particular, I'm thinking about the Ukraine war. Remember that? People don't want to talk about it very much now, because no one really likes a loser, and Zelensky is anything except a winner. This is also predicated, if you're watching this live, on recent talks, which the West says have gone really well, but the Russians say haven't gone anywhere. So who's telling the truth? Who's right? Well, as often happens on a Monday, if you're watching it live, we have our ace investigative journalist and very well-connected man about town, our man in Manila. It's Warren Thornton. Warren, good to see you. How have you been?
Hello, Lembit. I've been absolutely fine. How are you?
Not bad at all. I hear you had an electrical storm. Tell us about that.
We did, yeah. It was when they do come in this area of the world, they are quite spectacular. I'll send you some pictures so you can have a look.
Yeah, do. I understand the locals aren't that keen, but you liked it.
Yeah, it's a light show like you wouldn't believe.
And you don't have to pay for it either. There we go. Let's blame it all on global warming. Let's talk about another thing that's heating up, and that's the situation when it comes to Europe, America, Russia, and the Ukraine situation. It doesn't seem that anything's getting better there. What's your take on these talks that have been taking place and have occupied center stage in the Western media? Although when I say center stage, nothing like the attention that particular conflict used to have.
No, exactly that. And it's more of the same thing. You have the Ukrainians trying to get an energy deal because, of course, the Russians are able to smash their energy infrastructure very, very easily. And they're going to continue to do that. And in fact, they can even put the sort of pedal to the metal even stronger if they so wish. The Europeans are trying to scupper all the talks and try to get the Americans to be fully on board. The Americans are trying to slide out because they want to get on with Asia. They know that they're sinking money into a loser, and they're trying to get out with what you might call a win. And of course, the Russians are not having it at all. No ceasefire. The Russians are not changing their position in the slightest. So what we've got is the Americans going with an economic deal, the Ukrainians going with the normal ceasefire backed by the Europeans, and the Russians going, no, we'll just keep going. Thank you very much if you're not going to listen to what we've been telling you.
Okay, that's a good overall picture. Let's go into this in parts. First of all, Donald Trump. Donald Trump, the man who reckons he gets on pretty well with, with Vladimir Putin. I think they do have a good relationship. Donald Trump said that he'd fix the war in 24 hours. You were right. I was wrong. Over a year later, he still hasn't fixed it. Donald Trump is still keen on two things: winning the Nobel Peace Prize in what you might call a rather maverick way, and also getting this peace deal. What is Donald Trump thinking, in your view, right now about the...
Well, he's thinking it can be solved by monetary gain. So, in other words, offering, all sorts of embellishments like being on the peace board and giving him some of the Ukraine rebuild, running the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant together and things like this. And they're just, Donald Trump and Witkoff and Kushner are all businessmen, and they're trying to look at the monetary side of this. But the Russians aren't looking at this in a monetary way. The Russians are looking at this as the Ukraine being in NATO, or there being NATO troops, is an existential threat to the Russians. And as far as they're concerned, and also when you look at the neo-nationalists or neo-Nazis, depending on which side of the coin you're on, this also is something that the Russians do not want, and they don't want Ukraine having a massive army. Now, all three of these problems are not being addressed by the West. They're going in with their own agenda. Till they start listening to the Russians, nothing's going to happen.
And of these talks, we've got Mark Rutte with Trump, Rubio, and others. I think Mark Rutte is an exceptionally odd man. He really gives me the creeps. I don't think he's good with people. And I have to say, he totally blew his credibility with me when he said that 5% of the entire turnover of Europe should be put into war, because that makes lethal force makes us safer. This is a stuck record from about 1914.
Yes. The trouble that we have, of course, is Mark Rutte and his predecessor before him, Stoltenberg, who was head of NATO, or the head mouthpiece for NATO, I should say. It's really the generals that are in charge of NATO. But the head mouthpieces like Stoltenberg and Rutte have been saying for ages that the Russians are losing, and this is happening and this is happening. And everybody has seen through the lies. And of course, that means that anything that Rutte has to say, one, carries no weight whatsoever, because it's not based in any factual, there has no factual foundation behind it. So quite straight away, people are questioning it. And of course, Rutte jumping into the Greenland problem. And of course, we still don't know what's going to happen with Greenland. But the fact that he wanted Denmark and Greenland to roll over very quickly, of course, has destroyed any credibility he might have in terms of on the international stage. He's seen as a laughing stock, I'm afraid. Lembit?
Yeah, but when you say he's reversed his position on Greenland, what's actually happened there? I don't understand. Are they saying you can have it, Donald, or you can't have it? I don't get it.
It's a half and half. What they've had is a fudge. Trump hasn't got Greenland, but what he has got is full control of Greenland, but of course under Denmark still. So he can put bases on there. They already have a base there, but it's only about 150 people. And when people go, oh, well, didn't you know they had a base there? Yeah, they do, but it's really a listening outpost. 150 people is not going to stop what they say is coming, and of course it's not coming at all. And they will also get drilling rights, so they'll be able to make a massive naval and air force base there, and of course get drilling rights, which is exactly what America wanted when they went in hard in the first place. Was allow you know how it does with a house price. You go in very, very high, and of course then you allow somebody to knock you down, and you get what you want in the end, which is exactly what they have got.
Is that what you think's actually happened here then?
Absolutely.
Okay, and then just on this Greenland thing, I feel people misunderstand that when Donald Trump's speaking, often he's being ironic, or he's just saying things which are throwaway comments. And you've got these fourth division politicians, including Rutte, in my view, take everything he says literally. So when you say Trump's getting what he wants, did he ever have an intention of invading and conquering Greenland?
No, he's got no intention of actually invading Greenland because it would completely finish NATO. But in a roundabout way, he's finished NATO anyway, for the simple fact that NATO are meant to be this organization that protects the weaker countries from the much stronger ones. They just rolled over and basically let him do in Denmark whatever he wants to do. So NATO as an organisation has just absolutely shot itself in the foot. So has the European Union. And of course, they will kowtow. It just goes to show you who has the real power. And the European Union and Europe are massive losers in everything that's gone on.
Yeah, it goes on about Greenland and so on. Mark Rutte just doesn't look credible. I just don't understand why anyone takes him particularly seriously.
I don't think they do, to be honest with you. I did a post about Mark Rutte a long time, a fair while ago, and I was amazed how many people in his own country of Holland absolutely detested him. I mean, it wasn't like they didn't like him. I mean, they absolutely hated him with a passion, and they were very, very happy when he left to go to NATO. So of course, his stock was not very high at the very start, and of course, this does seem to be, as well as the European Union tends to be, for failed politicians who have not done much elsewhere or been thrown out of their country because they're ineffective. Mark Rutte is the head of NATO. Annalena Baerbock is the UN Secretary General at the United Nations. Ursula von der Leyen is, the head of the European Union. The European Commission with Kaja Kallas. All these people have failed in their own countries, Lembit.
Yeah, I have to say that I didn't know anything about this man on the screen, Mark Rutte, until he became head of NATO. But I just reckon he's just an empty vessel. And
yeah, he's a Dutch version of Keir Starmer, basically. He'll just go along with absolutely
that's
anything.
Almost libel. That's almost libel, you could say.
But libel to who? Libel to Keir Starmer or Mark Rutte?
Good point, well made. Actually, good point, well made. I would say a pox on both their houses. They're perfectly capable of doing it themselves. Tempted as I am to talk about Starmer's latest debacles, let's stay with this. I don't want to come back to Mark Rutte in the second half of the show, but I take it that he, in your view, has not been taken seriously by the Russians.
No, there is nobody in the West that is taken seriously by the Russians. They're quite happy to speak to Orban, but they see everybody in the.
That's the premier in Hungary, Viktor Orban.
Yes, the Hungarian Prime Minister, they think, is a serious politician, but people like Starmer, people like, of course, Merz, and people like Macron and Peskov, Dmitry Peskov, who's the spokesman for Vladimir Putin, came out just yesterday and said these people all talk horrible, horrible things about Russia, and then suddenly they'll want to talk to us. Well, we won't be interested. Not that we get too upset about it, but it is incredibly disrespectful when they say the things that they say. So when they're coming out with all this sort of Churchillian nonsense, which they've got no chance of backing up because they have no money left to fight this war, and they've given all their weapons to Ukraine. So all this Churchillian nonsense of, we will fight the Russians and we're right behind Ukraine. Yes, they are right behind Ukraine, around about 3,000 miles in most cases.
Well, come to Peskov in a short while. So let me give you the chance to summarize the status of NATO, perhaps in terms of Greenland, but mainly in terms of Ukraine. Is NATO in any way serious?
NATO's got absolutely nothing going for it. It's a conglomeration of countries that don't agree with each other. They are terrified that America will leave. That's why they've sort of rolled over on concessions on Greenland. The one thing they can't have is them leaving NATO. So for all the barking, it's a bit like when you open the door and go on then, if you want to take on the big dog, go ahead. And then, of course, the moment the door opens and you're confronted with that reality, goes very, very quiet indeed, Lembit.
And in terms of Rutte, just an empty vessel?
Yeah, absolutely. He's sort of Keir Starmer with bells on, really, as many of these people are. You like to be your David Lammy, for instance, Cooper. We haven't heard from the Foreign Secretary, just gone completely missing. Of course, people like von der Leyen, Kaja Kallas, whose grasp on history is probably something that even a third former would probably do better in an examination than they would with her.
And Rutter's in the same category. I have to say that is my biggest concern. We've got such low-grade people like him, and Greenland completely open to more US presence, as you say. And there's quite an interesting interview actually by Bloomberg, because they basically did roll over and let America tickle their tummy. And then they threaten things like, oh, well, if it's Greenland, that's the end of NATO. Who cares? Who cares? Russia's not about to invade and conquer Europe. And I'll talk about that in a short while. You're watching me, Lembit Öpik, here on Unprecedented TV and Lembit Öpik Live. And we're talking about the potentially useless state of the European Union and NATO. And where are we going with a war which is increasingly hard to find information on? For some mysterious reason, the mainstream media don't really want to talk about it so much. We'll come back to that in a moment. First, a reminder that Claire Dyer's excellent series, Dire Consequences, goes from strength to strength. Watch this. That's Dire Consequences here on Unprecedented TV, unmissable television. She's already created 3 national stories. Of course, she didn't get the credit in the mainstream media. Might be good if you guys start being a little bit more generous to us for giving you the stories. All you have to do is say, first released on Unprecedented TV. Somebody else who's capable of scoops, all the way from Manila in the Philippines, is Warren Thornton, who's with me today. We were talking before the break about the uselessness of Mark Rutte. We came up with a very amusing headline. If we can put that up, can we get that headline up? Yeah, there it is. Roger Bootle. Useless Europe is sliding into an unprecedented crisis. Brussels' big bet on monetary union has brought little benefit and nearly ended in disaster. This is right back from October 2025, over a year ago. But look at those gormless people in the picture. Macron and Merz. These sort of pictures make it. It's so embarrassing to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you had Merz, who suddenly turned into Joan Rivers, having threatened Russia left, right, and centre, and now he suddenly turned into Joan Rivers, going, "Oh, can we talk to the Russians?" And then, of course, Macron, who turns up at the World Economic Forum with his aviator glasses on, looks like he's had a round 2 with Brigitte Macron. And she's finished off what she started on the plane.
That was mysterious, wasn't it? He had those glasses on. What was all that about?
Well, he had a damaged eye, and of course, people were saying, "Oh, it was a scratched retina or whatever." Certainly looked like he collected a good right-hander from Brigitte. That may or may not be the case, but you can see by these people and everything that they've done and everything that they've come out with, that there is no credibility to any of them whatsoever. Macron has no credibility with the Russians, the Chinese, or the Americans. Neither does Starmer, and neither, of course, does Merz.
The Macron thing was really weird. Well, without getting us prosecuted, what's your best guess?
My best guess with Emmanuel Macron is he would love to be his sort of Napoleon and this, that, and the other, and he'd love to lead France. But at the end of the day, he's another one sort of like out of the World Economic Forum, young global leaders, along with, people like Millet, who were in there, of Argentina, and your Keir Starmers. Macron was one of these. He was just dragged out of nowhere. And of course, they're just absolutely shocking, Lembit. Merz is another one. And of course, these people are all WEF guys, and they're all yes men. They'll just do whatever they're told and will not rock the boat. You don't have to have intellect if you say yes.
I've no idea. It really was really strange that he wore those glasses all the time. I've no idea what was underneath it. After the aeroplane incident, when he went to, was it South Korea?
Yes.
And he got a belt from
Yeah.
President Macron. You can't help being suspicious. I am really unhappy with domestic abuse, whoever experiences it. But
Yeah.
it's just doesn't help the whole image of these European leaders when they don't seem honest to me. And well done to the team for getting that picture up so fast. Let's move on then. On the one side, various people saying that Europe's useless in that case in economic sense, but Europe fights back. We aren't worthless. Europe faces up to its irrelevance in the Middle East. This is a more recent story. Trump's bombing of Iran reduced Europe's biggest players to the status of decoy ducks as they pursued talks hours before the raid began. That was last year. And it seems that they didn't know. They didn't know that Trump was going to do it. So
Yeah.
if they're not being informed about stuff like this, then really they are pretty irrelevant, aren't they?
Yeah, I think the British knew, but they didn't bother to let Starmer know. There were certainly flights out of Akrotiri Air Base that were helping, shall we say, target for the Americans, but they didn't know when the strikes were coming. But why would they tell Europe? What's the point? What were Europe going to do? Macron would have probably come out with some sort of mealy-mouthed excuse. So would Merz and everything else. When you see what they've done so far on the Ukraine stage, what use are they going to be in the Middle East? All they've done is have lots and lots of meetings with Zelensky and say, keep doing the great job you're doing because Ukrainians are dying and we're not. Of course, what use would they be in the Middle East? Absolutely zero.
Yeah, that is the thing. That what's heartbreaking, really. And they're just statistics from a distance, as far as I can see. They're not taken seriously, but you've got cemeteries full of dead Ukrainians, and
Yes, yeah.
and well, this is one example of it. There's thousands and thousands. You cover this in more detail in your show if you're watching live later on today on Unprecedented TV. How many are dying, would you say, on the Ukrainian side every day?
Okay, in the Ukrainian side, now this sounds absolutely crazy, but the Russians are losing around about 87 soldiers a day, anywhere between 87 to 100. Ukraine are losing anywhere between 1,300 and 1,500 soldiers a day. Now, that sounds like an awful lot, but when you remember that the front line is over 1,000 kilometers long, that is only 1.5 soldiers per kilometer that they're meaning to defend. That is not a lot at all. If the Russians really press the pedal to the metal, it could get ugly very quickly.
And it feels to me that the likes of Starmer, they just don't understand it. They're sociopathic. They don't feel this pain.
No, absolutely, because at the end of the day, it is a strange thing. I'll give you an analogy, Lembit. If you are living in Lvov and you're one of these neo-nationalists and you're not on the front line and you've got a nice cushy job, you're in Lvov and you're miles away from the Donbass, which is about 900. It's around about 900 miles away. So you're talking in British terms, Land's End to John O'Groats. Well, if a bomb goes off in Land's End in Cornwall, you don't really, it's no bother in John O'Groats. So there is this disconnect between the people who are really involved in this war, which is the poor so-and-sos that get thrown on the front line by Zelensky's cohorts and their horrible press ganging of the Ukrainian people. And, of course, the people who are living the party life in Kiev and Lvov. If you've got enough money, you can keep yourself off the front line. So there is this massive disconnect between the haves and have-nots.
Yes, and you've extensively covered these conscription gangs. For viewers who aren't familiar with this, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Ukrainian forces literally nab people of all ages off the streets and from their offices because they can't get enough volunteers. They give them a couple of weeks of training and throw them on the front line.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are talking about, just for instance, in Kiev the other day, they had these stations where you could go and charge, you can get a cup of coffee, you can get a meal, and you can go and charge your laptop because, of course, all the electricity had gone out. And basically they were saying, here's these stations where you can come along and you can charge all your equipment. So men were turning up with their laptops, and there was the TCC, or should we say the conscription guys waiting for them. And it was basically a sting operation to grab people and throw them on the front line. They even order pizzas from takeaway departments, and when they turn up to deliver the pizza, they grab them and drag them onto the front line as well. It is unbelievable.
How will you get a motivated military force if these people have been forced into fighting?
Well, you simply don't. And what's going to happen, as we predicted this is going to happen, and it's already started happening in Germany and America, is the people that fled Ukraine because they didn't want to be conscripted and thrown onto the front line, or now, as they call it, press gang. Now the Germans and the Americans are starting to return them, return the Ukrainians who fled because they're in the country illegally. And of course, the army are waiting for them when they literally cross the border. So they're able to grab them and throw them straight on the front line. So
the West is now throwing people back into the line of fire.
Yeah, we've got 851 from America, and so far 377 from Germany. And of course, they're talking very much about revoking their status to stay in their country. Poland, Germany, Romania, they're all looking at repatriating the Ukrainians.
And meanwhile, the war continues aggressively. You mentioned the attack on energy. That's been pretty effective, hasn't it? They've really gone to town with that. And it's cold. It's -11, I was told, if you're watching this live. And I still remain, I've said this on your show, I remain amazed by how few civilian casualties there are. Obviously, there are some, but it's not that many.
No, it's certainly the Russians try and avoid them where they can, because they know that the propaganda war, the Ukrainians, with the Americans' help and the Western help, are really good at propaganda. So they try and keep the civilian casualties down. Now, the Ukrainians, on the other side of the coin, don't do that at all. In fact, they do like a terrorist attack. But the Russians are able to bomb these, obviously, areas quite successfully. They're able to put over 1,000 of these Garand drones in the air a day. And Ukraine simply don't have the air defenses to be able to cope with it. They're overwhelmed.
The interesting point you make there is the same as I made, that there aren't that many civilian casualties. It's still so tragic to me that it's people, non-combatants, are being killed in a pointless war which is already lost.
Yeah, absolutely, and it is one of the most ridiculous things that they say. It is always, and this is a strange thing, Lembit. And if you go and look, when people are talking about Bucha and the Russians did this and the Russians did that, well, there's no actual evidence whatsoever. But what you always find is the side that starts losing are the ones that start committing the war crimes.
Is that because of desperation?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And of course, they try some tactic, any tactic, because, of course, they want to cause as much damage as they can, or, of course, try and change the outcome of the war. Never does that.
Yeah, let's talk about Peskov a bit more. There he is. He is the spokesman for Vladimir Putin.
Yes, absolutely. And Peskov has actually turned around and said that we will not be bullied or swayed by the Americans as Europe have been. So you can see that the Russians have taken notice over Greenland. And he has turned around and said, when you want to start talking common sense and start talking about the things that are important to us, then we're willing to listen, but we will not be bullied, we will not be swayed, and we will not change our, shall we say, our take on the SMO in any way, shape or form.
Special military operation. This leads to the obvious question. What is the exit strategy for the West in this?
The exit strategy for the West is to come to peace terms and give the Ukrainians what they want. Give the Russians what they want. Because going in trying to assert your peace terms on the side that is winning is never going to work. The side that's winning will just go away. We'll continue. And they've got to come to some sort of peace terms. I would say by August at the latest, because then Ukraine will literally not have enough men to be able to hold on to large chunks of Ukraine. So they've got to come to peace times, and they've got to come right quick, and there's got to be a change of heart or a change of common sense. And I think we're starting to see that. You're starting to see Merz going, well, let's talk to the Russians, and suddenly Maloney's going, well, we should talk to the Russians. And of course, everybody's putting themselves forward for it. But Peskov has already said that there'll be no talk with the European Union until von der Leyen and Callas are gone.
The Dream Team hasn't been involved, has it, though? There we are. There's the Dream Team. David Lammy and Keir Starmer, the caretaker Prime Minister, who seems barely any more intelligent than Lammy. I heard Lammy on this political conversation on the BBC, and he just came across as so embarrassingly superficial.
Yes, I mean, he's got all the IQ and the social graces of a potty. He really is absolutely terrible because, I mean, you know, how can I put this? He doesn't have a grasp. I remember him sitting in a cringe, an absolute cringe moment for the UK, saying that he was talking about oppression, standing here as a black man. He was actually sitting down, trying to equate his oppression with the oppression of the Russians on the Ukrainians. And of course, who can forget Keir Starmer's involvement with 3 Ukrainian male models, which we've still got to get to the bottom of, because nobody is even talking about that. And of course, that's coming up in May. So all in all, let's say that we're not covering ourselves in glory in the UK, Lembit.
And finally, really, I want to go back to the deaths. The Ukrainian death toll. Why isn't this causing something of revolution in Ukraine?
There's nobody left to overthrow them, Lembit. I mean, what we're talking about here are 2.1 million men that have died. These are Ukrainians, and of course they come out with these idiotic Russian numbers, which are complete nonsense. There's 247 of these military cemeteries. With thousands and thousands of bodies in each one. So you do the mathematics. Then there's the obviously the burials out in the middle of nowhere where they've not been able to bury them. Then the Russians handing them back. And of course, you're talking about the bodies that they've got rid of so they don't have to pay out, that they've incinerated. And of course, there's mass graves out in the middle of nowhere. It is one of these things, Lembit, when you look at it and you go, how does this carry on? Carries on because the mainstream media and the governments in the West are absolutely complicit with Ukrainians dying so that people from the UK, the USA and Germany don't have to. If they thought for 1 second that this war was, that they could actually win this war, that our troops would be all over the ground. They know they can't win it. They know Ukrainians are dying in vast numbers, and they're just saying, We'll keep feeding you weapons. But the trouble is they've got no money anymore, Lembit, and they've got no weapons left to give.
Where can people get another dose of Warren Thornton, as well as, of course, on Unprecedented TV? You're on 6 days a week now.
Yes, absolutely. So you can come to warrenthornton.com Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And, of course, on Sunday nights, it's a special event because between 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. we're joined by the wonderful Lembit Öpik from Unprecedented TV.
You flatter me, Mr. Thornton. I very much look forward to coming to see you in the Philippines, and who knows what fascinating interviews may transpire from that. Thank you so much. That's Warren Thornton, investigative journalist and our man in Manila, the thriller in Manila. Welcome your views as well. Do follow me on X at Lembit Öpik, please. And more than anything, please subscribe to Unprecedented TV on YouTube. We're massively into expansion now, and you're going to see a real earthquake, a real seismic shift in what we're doing. We know what we stand for, the facts and opinions, but now the pain shall meet. You'll know when we're expressing our views, and I'm absolutely determined that all of my presenters stick to facts, whatever conclusions they draw from that. Thank you very much for watching. Big thanks to Warren Thornton and also to the team. Pretty nimble today. And do watch the other shows as well. We have tons going on here on Unprecedented TV, and be one of the subscribers. It's free and it's informative. Trust yourself to make your judgments. We'll give you the facts. You do the rest. Have a good day.
Immediate ceasefire in Gaza. The return of the sausages.